Yeah, I think that flowed quite well, actually. I had some reservations about certain points I'd put on there. It's funny when you're writing it, it kind of flows and you go, oh, yeah, that bit. And then you read it and you go, actually, it doesn't make any sense at all.
I know.
Hello and welcome to the Clarotherapist channel. I'm Richard Simon. Today we're going to be talking about AIOps and we're going to base our discussion around a report that Bloor Research has produced called Hybrid IT Infrastructure Management Vendor Landscape. And to tell us all about it is Paul Bevan. Hello, Paul. How are you doing?
Morning, Richard. I'm fine. Thanks for calling, speaking to me. Lovely.
Great, and welcome to the channel. Now, Paul, I'd like us to start with a quick sort of intro to yourself, and also just to tell us a little bit about Bloor Research, please.
Okay, so I'm the research director for IT infrastructure at Bloor Research. Let me do the Bloor Research bit first. I'll come back to me. So Bloor is an IT analyst house. Very much in the past. It's been going since about the mid-1980s, so it's been around for quite some time. Best known probably for its data and security practices. The infrastructure piece is fairly recent. I came on board, I suppose, about 2016 to build up the IT infrastructure practice. My own background, I've been around far longer than I care to mention. I came into the IT industry in 1984, but I'd already spent 8 years in transportation. It was way before it was called logistics, but nowadays people would call it logistics and supply chain. So I was in sort of physical operations management in logistics. And you may say, how the hell did I get into IT from there? And the straight answer is that Burroughs, and there's an old name from the past, were looking for people who had that sort of transportation background and experience, real life experience, to help sell their distribution transportation solutions. So I joined there, and I've spent most of my working life in IT since then, in both sales and marketing. More in marketing. I'm not really a salesperson at the end of the day. I'm much more into the marketing side. Been around with Burroughs, then became Unisys, in and out of that once into Siemens Nixdorf. Came out of the sort of corporate world in 2008, 2009. And have been running my own sort of marketing consultancy up to that point, but very IT focused. And really what appealed to me about Bloor was the fact that it appeared very much as a sort of bridge to help vendors understand how they position themselves, but also sort of a navigator for end users to say, hey, how do I deal with what I'm hearing from the vendors. It was that sort of bridge perspective, that navigation for people, which sort of appealed to me, and really, which is really where Bloor focuses. So I do feel a little at times like a poacher turned gamekeeper when I'm talking to vendors.
Yeah, so certainly, I mean, you and I think, discussed prior to the recording, and we certainly have a lot of things in common. I enjoyed the background reminiscing about the old tech that kind of brought us into the industry. So this particular report, Paul, I wanted to cover with you today is around sort of that sort of whole AIOps and sort of service management observability space, which is really important because that is a changing landscape. We appreciate that we talk about sort of the whole of IT constantly changing and updating itself, reinventing itself, but certainly just looking at that sort of space of AIOps and management and observability, that seems to be going through through quite an upheaval at the moment. And the report has been released obviously recently. So if people kind of want to get hold of it, where would they go?
Okay, well, they need to go to the Bloor website, but I say we'll have a specific link that will take you straight to the to the report. It's you sign up for it, and we promise it's just an email sign up, no large questionnaire, but gives you the ability to see not just this report, but all the other reports in our library on a one-time use basis. So it's there on, so bloorresearch.com is the website, but we'll give you a direct link at the end of this.
Fantastic. Yeah, so we'll certainly include something in the description of this talk. So I wanted to kind of jump straight into definitions and talk about sort of AIOps and observability. Those seem to be quite high on people's agenda. They seem to be mentioned quite a lot. And as we said, the landscape for those seems to be shaping up and forming over the last few years. What's kind of the AIOps definition for you, and where does kind of observability sit with that?
Okay. Yeah, AIOps and observability, the both of them, are terms that the IT industry is bad at taking these terms and using them in probably far too wide a sense. So I think if you look at the original intent of AIOps and where I think its main focus lies is in the whole sort of event correlation and automation piece in the middle. It really acts as a hub in the middle in terms of pulling together all the data, enabling you to analyze that data, use machine learning, artificial intelligence, other algorithms to sort of get some sort of correlation between all the things that are going on. So I think, if you keep focused on that engagement at the middle, bringing together all the monitoring data and then feeding out the results, from a correlation point of view into some sort of automated environment for IT service management. So to me, it's almost like the sort of, in a spider's web, it's that piece in the center, pulling it all together and pulling all the strings. The observability one is slightly different in the sense that it's, the term in one sense is quite new. Now, you might annoy the network management people because they've talked about observability in the network for some time. But in terms of the way in which we've moved to the cloud, the challenge that's given in terms of understanding the end-to-end visibility, the sort of the focus has gone back onto the applications themselves, but not just the code of the application, but the way the application interact with the whole of the infrastructure, which quite often is now outside the control of ITOps. And so this whole term observability has really come about, I think, as much as anything from almost like the application performance management people, the APM providers, who are starting to see that actually they've got to take a much broader perspective of what's affecting their application than perhaps they have in the past.
Sure. And the report itself, where kind of are you aiming that? Who's kind of the target audience for the report?
Largely, it's the sort of CIO, CTO type audience. It's really aimed as well at the enterprise. It's really to give the medium to large enterprise a view of what's going on out there, given the world that they live in. But also, and we say, from a management summary point of view, we think, business execs ought to be looking at it, because one of the challenges for IT operations is that, if the business execs know anything at all about the cloud, it's that it's making life agile and, it ought to be cheaper to run because you're not having to run your own IT, all those sort of issues that make it sound like, some wonderful sort of managed free nirvana.
Sure.
And I think they just need to get a sense of, what's going on, but also the opportunity then to say, let's have some business service SLAs rather than just performance SLAs. So I'd like to see some, business managers at least reading the management summary.
Sure. And there's obviously the report covers a lot of areas, but one of the things that I want to kind of pick up on, and I think this was in the summary, is the sort of the management landscape. And you said it needs to be about rapid and accurate sort of analysis of data to resolve the problems, start predicting potential problems, and also kind of remediating the problems autonomously as well. So tell us a little bit more about that. What did you actually mean about those sort of 3 points?
So I think the first thing is the volume of data that's kicking around. That's number one. it isn't handleable using, too much manual intervention. That's number one. It's very hard to understand all the linkages in your environment. So there are so many points on the network, points in the system that you've got to start capturing data for and analyzing. And actually what we're seeing from a business perspective, of course, and it's just been accelerated by the pandemic, if anything, is that, IT is not only critical to the business, sometimes it is the business.
Mm.
And business happens at such a pace these days. We all talk about, the speed, the velocity of business and the velocity of change.
Yeah.
I think, so that's the need to be able to get hold of and understand what's going on in real time or near real time is critical to the survival of business. And if you're going to do that, you can't spend days and weeks and months trying to work out what went wrong. I mean, yeah, you need to go back and do that. But fundamentally, you're getting to the point that says, actually, I need to see things starting to go wrong in my network before they impact the end user. So it's about this sort of digital experience management as well. See it before it's going to be a real problem. Because
Sure.
most times you can see things starting to happen on the network. It's no point waiting until the charts all go red. You need to start to see that when they start to go, amber. Oh, quick, let's put it.
Indeed.
And then the autonomous piece, remediating problems autonomously. Again, it's the same thing. If you want to do it at pace across such a wide field of management, the ability to do everything manually gets harder and harder, notwithstanding issues around skills availability. So you're going to have to let the machine take over to an extent.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I do agree with that. And that's certainly something that is, for a better word, observable in that sort of changing landscape as we kind of move more into cloud and things like that. You also talk about, just again briefly in that, I believe in that summary, about sort of AIOps being a hub for existing tools. So obviously the landscape is changing. We've got a lot of challenges with different sort of technologies like containers, orchestration, DevOps, all presenting these sort of difficulties really for enterprises and the vendors really alike as well. But you kind of just mentioned that briefly about sort of AIOps being a hub.
Yep. Yeah, it's one of the sort of long-standing debates that goes on in this sector is do I have an all-encompassing tool that will manage my whole IT operations environment, or do I go with best of breed? And it sort of swings backwards and forwards, and you've got people with vendors with suites of tools that are sort of wrapped together in some sort of platform. But the reality today, I think, is that there are too many different moving parts for the existing tool sets, however well that they spread out across domains, to really deliver the sort of capabilities that are necessary. In that environment, who's going to act as the sort of, there's an old term, manager of managers. How are you going to bring that together? And that's where I see AIOps starting to play. It's much more than the old manager of managers, because you're putting the AIOps capability in the middle. But it's really that roundabout, if you like, in a sort of road sense, where all the monitoring data, all that data is flowing in rapidly. And then you're passing it out to service management to remediate the issues. So that's what I mean by the hub. And the fact that I don't believe currently you could go and get a single tool that will do everything for you. Therefore, you need that sort of hub to manage that. Quite apart from some of the political issues of getting the various sort of siloed IT operations teams to give up their own tools anyway. That's a completely different debate.
Sure, indeed. And sort of IT management is a hybrid, as we said, and also encompassing not just sort of the service management, ITSM or IT service management, but also things like, as you mentioned earlier, digital experience management, which I love. I think that's a really cool term to have. But also the data center, the network, and application sort of management as well. So APM and things like that, I think is all kind of part of that. Do you kind of see that as continuing to encompass more things in the future, or to kind of, is that sort of where we're at the moment?
I think it's where we're at the moment in one sense. There is blurring of the lines between all those sort of areas. So if you look at each of the vendors, they will have had a start point. The start point may well have been in data centers, management. It may well have been in network management, but they're all branching out into other areas, so this sort of idea of domain-centric vendors as opposed to domain-agnostic vendors is sort of breaking down as they try and grow out. You look at a lot of the network performance management people have moved towards monitoring the digital experience management piece, i.e. the end user environment, because obviously, they're used to managing all, lots of different endpoints. The server management people have moved out into sort of making their application aware. They haven't quite moved into application performance management, but they've got an awareness of how the application interacts with the server infrastructure and with the wider infrastructure. So you just sort of see this, and if you look at, if you like, the legacy players in this marketplace, the IBMs, BMCs, and CAs of this world, then they've got all the bits and pieces. Whether they amalgamate them properly into one usable in platform is another matter. But so there's a wide range. But I say Bloor's perspective, my perspective, very much is that to really get your finger on the button, as it were, and you need a small number of tools. I mean, we need to get down from the sort of 10 to 30 sets of IT operations management tools to 3, 4, or 5. If you can get it down to that level, with the AIOps acting as that sort of hub in the middle.
Thank you for watching this talk. If you enjoyed the content, please comment, share, like, and subscribe. See you next time.